Hello everybody, this is Grandmaster Jacek Stopa from Poland. I will be discussing the Dutch defense here in a course for club players. The Dutch defense for black as a weapon against the move d4 comprises of three different types. That is the Leningrad Dutch, the Stonewall Dutch, and the Classical Dutch. I will be focusing on the first one, on the Leningrad Dutch, which is the most popular. We get there by d4, f5, c4, knight f6, with the main idea, first idea here being getting the bishop out through g7. Okay, it will be controlling this long diagonal. So g6, g3, bishop g7, bishop g2, castle, castle, d6. Okay, knight c3 is the main move, and black has two main responses, queen e8 as well as c6. Queen e8, preparing the move e5. This is a very thematic idea. If black can get a strong center with the move e5 there, with the e5, f5 pawns, if white cannot challenge it on time and black gets something like e4, white may quickly get in trouble because of this bishop becomes very passive. And the move c6. c6 is aimed at controlling the square d5 and just kind of a general way of controlling important squares here. But maybe later black will be trying to play queen c7 with the previously mentioned idea e5 and possibly e4 later. Black can also try knight d7, e5. We'll be getting into all these ideas, all these concepts with examples from games by top players, some older examples as well as examples from my own games, and some line analysis. There is also another move, knight c6 here. This is a little bit more rare and kind of a controversial, maybe a little bit dubious response for black, but it leads to some very, very interesting positions. I've had some successes using this line, although objectively I must say that white should be doing better. And objectively, if you play against a learned opponent, this is probably not a good idea to play. But it's a very nice surprise weapon, and we'll get into some details here in one of our last chapters. So this is the Leningrad. Now, what is the other two types? Well, there's the Classical Dutch, which gets the bishop out to e7. Okay, many people will regard this as a very kind of a passive way to develop, as this bishop clearly isn't as good here as on g7, but as some players would say, I think mainly currently the leading authority on this variation is British Grandmaster Simon Williams, who has written a very, very inspiring book here on this variation. He has some examples from his own games where he beats some very strong players, and we'll take a look at one of his games in this variation, and we'll also see one of my games I've played, and I won a nice game here as well. And there is also the third type, known as the Stonewall. Why is it called Stonewall? Well, because of black's pawn structure. If you take a look, this is sort of an unusual way of get the pawns out of the white squares. Black tries to seize the control of the center and play on the black squares. Okay, this is a normal way to get the pieces out. Doesn't seem as active as the Leningrad either, but it has its own pluses, and even Magnus Carlsen has used this on a variety of occasions. We will take a look at one of his games at the end of our course against Anand, where he won a pretty smooth game with black. We'll see he equalized very early and then just sort of started pushing, and Anand couldn't find a way out. So what are the origins of the Dutch defense? Not many people know. The first use was in the year 1789 by a player named Elias Stein. It was later rejected in 1931 by Siegbert Tarrasch as a dubious, as a bad way to kind of to handle the opening with the black side. But in the year 1951, in the match between Botvinnik and Bronstein. Both players used this opening, and we will see that afterwards it was picked up by a few other players. We'll take a look at some games by a Ukrainian Grandmaster, Vladimir Malanyuk, who introduced a lot of ideas that had a lot of impact on the future play. We'll also take a look at some modern games by strong players like Nakamura and Grischuk, who used this opening on a variety of occasions with very good results. I must say that even Carlsen played this as well. The Leningrad Dutch. Kramnik has a few games, and Topalov. So really, very many players have put some faith into this from the black side. Why do I personally like it so much? It's because of the nature of this opening. I like to consider myself as an attacking player, and this is an opening which is very imbalancing from the very start. Black is trying to get his pieces out in a way that challenges White's position. So why don't we try to delve into some of the sidelines and move order overview. So d4, f5. One can imagine that there's a lot of ways in which White can continue here. Knight c3 looks like a very logical move. Aiming for e4. The bishop comes out to g5. That's also something that looks very standard. This will lead to some of the more, I would say, strange looking positions with this kind of a structure. There is also some opportunities for black here to get yet another type of position with h6. Bishop retreats, g5. What do you guys think? You think maybe White is losing the bishop, or what happens here? If at any point you feel like stopping the video to have your own shot at what is going on, please, by all means, feel free to do so. Well, White is not exactly losing the bishop here. There is the move e3 with a checkmate here on h5, so black has to be careful, and maybe simple knight f6, bishop g3, d6. So this kind of a position where it seems like black is maybe a little bit overextended here with these pawns, which has some pluses and minuses. White will be challenging this, maybe immediately with h4 or in a little bit. There is also the move bishop f4 that we will take a look at. Also a kind of a very natural move. This square looks pretty good for the bishop. And there's also e4, known as the Staunton Gambit, with ideas like this. And we will be taking a look at why White would want to sacrifice a pawn here on e4. When it comes to move order tricks, the main idea is that White can postpone or not play the move d4 at all. So what if White starts with knight f3, for example? Since we are dedicated Dutch players, we go f5. If d4, we will most likely transition. For example, this way we get the same exact setup as before. And we get into the Leningrad Dutch, just with a different move order. Okay, here, White also has some other options, but they are not so dangerous. White will usually play c4 and just go to the usual setup. But what if White goes d3 here on move 2? Well, this changes the character of the position dramatically. This has some ideas of its own. Okay, maybe White wants to play e4, but this definitely won't be anything close to the Leningrad Dutch anymore. What to do? Well, maybe knight f6, probably the most logical move. at least looks like the most logical move. And now there's a black is up for a surprise here. There's the move e4, and it's very strong. If we try to get to this position now, white has a pretty strong move, after which black gets in trouble. Knight g5, and now black really will have some problems with the white squares here, with ideas like knight h7 followed up with bishop g6. Doesn't fare well for black at all. But we have a way to get a normal position here as well, simply playing the move d6. White continues with his e4, and we challenge the center with e5. Well, one can argue that this bishop is a little bit locked up, but so is the white's bishop. So the position is a little bit unusual. It's not exactly any kind of a transition into for instance, e4, e5. But yeah, it's kind of a position of its own. Knight f3, f5, again, d3, d6. Knight c3, knight c6. Takes. Okay. If he doesn't take, maybe plays bishop e2 or something like that. We go knight f6, castles, bishop e7. This is a pretty standard position without any problems. But white does have something more active here, and we have to be ready for it. So e takes f5. We follow this up with this not so obvious move, knight ge7. Why don't we capture with the bishop? Well, here actually there is a way for white to follow. There is a way for white to complicate things here with the move d4. Let's say we take knight d4, ed, queen d4, and if we decide to go for this pawn here, after bishop c4, white is really putting into question the whole white squares setup here for black. For instance, if we try to, let's say, trade queens, white goes queen d2, okay, queen e5, kind of get the bishop out of there. This, after maybe the bishop, if it retreats, castles, we really sort of struggle with development as well as king safety. The king has no way to castle kingside. The pieces are undeveloped, and let's say if castles queenside, after knight d5, white is putting a lot of pressure on the queen side, putting a lot of pressure on the king, creating immediate threats. So this really is a problematic position. Let's say a6. This becomes a really concrete now after queen a5. Checkmate is threatening. What happens after ab? What do you guys think? How do you think white can finish this off? So rook e1 with the idea bishop g4 discovery check turns out to be very deadly. There really is no easy, really no way to avoid some major trouble for black. King b8, bishop e3, c5 is impossible, the rook will fall, and if b6 instead, black just captures, white captures the pawn, cb, queen b6 check, hanging king c8, and after bishop g4, that's basically it. So if we want to avoid this, well, okay, let's say first we don't capture the pawn, and instead go queen f6. Try to trade the queens right away, go to some more peaceful position, but this time after queen b4, white bothers the pawn here on the queen side. No way to defend it really other than castling. One way is bishop e3 or queen a4, even stronger. So again, the same type of problem as before. The king is not exactly too safe here on the queen side. And this position with some future ideas of bishop a6 really give white an edge here. So how do we make sure that we get some normal position out of this variation? Well, there is a very interesting move, knight ge7. The idea is to capture this with the knight on f5, and if that happens, if white simply continues like this with bishop e2 castles, bishop e7, and black is totally fine. What if white tries to play g4 to defend the pawn? Well, how do we usually challenge this kind of a way of securing the pawn structure? h5 calls into question this whole setup. We take advantage of the fact that white cannot play h3 because of the pin here. So maybe some more adventurous players would come up with a move like this, but this time really black has absolutely no issues and probably an advantage because of a better pawn structure. These two pawns for white don't look very well. Black will probably follow up with some queen d7 and castle, and the position is very good. White's way of trying to get something out of the position would be d4. So again, as previously, but this time we capture, we take this with a knight. White has no way of getting the bishop out to c4 or making any other useful move, just has to react with the queen immediately. And if check, well, queen e7, we trade the queens. We have a very solid position with no weaknesses. If knight d5, bishop simply retreats to d8. Defending, we will later play c6, get the knight out, castle peacefully, and play on a very nice position. So this way of reacting here with knight c6 and followed with knight g7 should get us a pretty normal position. But let's not try to overdo this rare variation and look into some other tricks here, other move order tricks. Let's say if after d6 white decides to play g3, we will continue. We'll play knight f6. There's some players that would maybe choose this right away with the idea bishop e7, knight f6. It's all good. This is normal because white really is going for a slower setup this time, so we have time to choose a good move order. I would recommend going with g6 now and entering this type of setup where white really has two options now. One is going with c4. This will be the reversed Sicilian if we decide to go for e5. This is a very normal position. We can later choose to get the knight out to c6, maybe d7, or okay, maybe black will play c6 with the later idea of getting d5. Many interesting plans. White will probably continue on the queen side. Or we can stop him, and this is normal play. And another way is to try to get e4 down maybe with the move knight d2, castles, and e4. We take, e5 is a very normal play. Maybe knight c6 if somebody wants to keep the bishop open without locking it up with the move e5. This is all very good setups. So another big question is, can we get the Dutch defense after c4 on move 1? And the answer is that yes, we can. We can get the Leningrad setup here with f5. Let's say knight f3. So the idea is white does not play d4. So the Leningrad here would be unaffected. This fianchetto on the king side. Maybe usually white will follow up with this, but we already know what this is. If d3, the same setup can safely follow this very solid position. If e4, I guess, would be the only way to try to mess things up here, but fe and this position is normal. We can get the bishop out as the computer wants. Knight c6 also makes a lot of sense. So the only problem would be if we were a Stonewall player. This time, let's say if e6, bishop g2, c6 castles d5, sort of hoping for d4 to get a normal Stonewall. But you will see that white has this extra option of d3, and he will try to challenge our pawn structure with later playing knight d2 or knight c3 and e4, supported by this d3 pawn. These positions may become problematic. Other than that, d6 could be an option as well for black, this time trying to change the move order with e5, or of course continuing into the Leningrad in this particular way. So this is it for our brief introduction, and let us now proceed with some of my own games.